Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on MiamiGhostChronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind-the-scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing good. Really good. As you know, my last show, I told you my farm just decided to quit after a power outage, and after 72 hours of no water, like I said, I had no problems admitting I'm a real crybaby when it comes to AC and, of course, running water. You just don't realize how much we take it for granted till you don't have it. And like I said before, the last experience I had was in the fall of last year, when these hurricanes tore through South Florida, and I was with a week without electricity and water. But it's almost like misery loves company, since I knew everybody else was in the same situation I was. It's like totally different. But anyway, so that's what I'm saying. It's all good. It's all good because I've got water. But anyway, I'm also all good today again because I have a fantastic guest today with us. This is a lady who's very well versed in the paranormal field. Her name is Marie D. Jones, and she is the best-selling author of fiction and nonfiction stories. She has an extensive background in journalism, metaphysics, and the paranormal, and she's worked in the field as a field investigator for MUFON in Los Angeles and San Diego in the 1980s and 1990s. She's also been on television, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens and the Nostradamus Effect series, and she also served as a special UFO abduction consultant for the 2009 Universal Picture science fiction movie, The Fourth Kind. Now, she's been interviewed on hundreds of radio talk shows, and she's lectured widely at major paranormal new science and self-empowerment events. And I am so happy to have her here today. How are you doing, Marie?
I'm doing great. Now, I have to warn you, I have a 20-year-old cat named Lucy who, whenever I do a radio show, decides to start wailing.
Oh, wait. See, this is, you are absolutely in the right place, because I live in a farmhouse. But besides that, I've always had animals. I have 5 dogs.
Right.
One that just I have a bunch of birds. And like my audience knows, all of a sudden you'll hear a screech or a bark or some weird noise. Plus I have chickens, and when I don't feed them, they come on my
pup. You get it.
Yes, I have roosters that look at me through my window, and they decide that in the middle of the day that they're going to go ahead and let me know, like, come and feed me. So yeah, that's belief.
Isn't that weird? But I mean, I could be sitting here working the whole day and nothing. But as soon as I get on the phone. So anyway, I just thought I would.
But you know what? I'm going to mention something. One time, this was already maybe like a year ago or a little bit less, I was interviewing this gentleman. His name is Christopher George. As a matter of fact, he lives over in San Diego. And in the middle of the interview, I remember him mentioning something about his mom loved cats. And all the way towards, I want to say, in the last maybe 20 minutes of the interview, I distinctly heard a cat meow. Now, what's really funny is I'm thinking it's his cat, and he's thinking it's my cat.
Oh, no.
So
funny.
Later on, I heard it, and then, I review the show anyway afterwards just to make sure everything's okay on the audio. And I sent him an email, and I said, hey, thanks. And by the way, I heard your cat He came out and he goes, I don't have a cat. So
Oh my
neither
God,
one
it
of
was
us
a
have a
ghost
cat.
cat
You
in
know,
the
I have cats,
wires,
but in another,
right?
I don't have a cat here. And it was like, but it
Oh,
was
that's
distinctly
creepy.
a meow. Okay. And it was, when he
Oh,
wrote back,
that's
he goes, I don't
funny.
have a cat. And we both laughed and we were, it was one of those things that neither one of us, just took it in stride because we're each thinking it's the other's cat. Exactly like you said, that was
Yeah.
close by and came out in the recording. So I'm glad I'm glad you put that out there in case. In
I
case.
I swear it's like, yeah, let me just put this out there before we even get started.
Well, you know what? And it's really funny. Everybody, and if you have children, you know how when they're little, they follow you around and they got to be underfoot wherever
Oh,
you're
yeah.
at. Well, animals do the same thing. They got to be underfoot, especially if you're not giving them direct attention somehow. They got to be like, notice me. So I
They
absolutely
know. They
understand.
just
Yes.
know. Oh, I think they do
Yes.
it on purpose.
Yes,
Anyway.
they do. They do. But it's like, believe me, if anybody understands, it's me. But anyway, Marie, let me
So
ask you what I
annoying.
ask all my guests, which is obviously you're involved in the paranormal field, but how did you get started? Your interest? Did you have a childhood experience? Did something happen later on as an adult?
That's such a hard question. Okay, so I have been really into ghosts and aliens and UFOs and Bigfoot since I was like a toddler.
Wow.
And I don't know why, because as far as I know, nothing happened. Nobody ever told me there was strange lights over the house and
Right.
the creatures came in. I don't know why. So I as a child I loved to read, and I loved to read ghost stories. And back then we had record players. Remember
Mm-hmm.
those things?
Right.
And I used to play these ghost stories that were on records and just play them over and over and over again. And oh my God, I was obsessed with UFOs.
Okay.
So I just think it's something that was natural, but I also loved science and nature from a really
Mm-hmm.
early age. And I'm kind of feeling like I must have sensed that it was all a part of the general, reality, that the reality that we see and the one that we don't see. And I always thought it was just all the same kind of stuff. It was only until later that I learned it wasn't.
Well, and
Um,
and and you know what?
yeah.
And did you ever have any experience that now maybe, sometimes as children we take things in stride and we don't think it's paranormal. We just think it's okay. Looking back, did you
Yes.
ever have any experiences as a child?
Yes. Okay. So three things that come to mind really quickly. One, we had woods behind our house with
Okay.
a lake. It was really cool. And I remember looking out. I always used to look for animals. I used to like to think that I was an animal tracker. Haha. I'm like 6. But I remember looking. So there was a fence, and then there was the woods. But there were a lot of breaks in the fence, so all of us neighborhood kids could go in the woods and down to the lake. And I remember looking and seeing something walking through the woods that I assumed at the time, for some strange reason, was Bigfoot. Now, how the heck did I even know? I must have seen it on some In Search of or some
Okay.
TV show back in the day. So, and then later I had two very vivid, unbelievably vivid dreams that still now today stand out to me as maybe not necessarily being dreams. And one of them, I saw a city in the sky. And I know
Okay.
that that's something that a lot of people have actually reported
Yes.
seeing. Well, the other one is the freakiest one. I must have been about 6 or 7 years old, and I dreamed that I was coming down. We had a driveway that kind of sloped downward into the garage, and I dreamed that I was looking through the garage to the back window, and there was sort of a skeleton head looking at me. And that
Wow.
stayed with me all my life, and I will never forget the first time I ever saw a picture of a gray alien.
Uh-huh.
I said, that's what was looking at me through the window. And
Wow.
now and then I started to even question whether that was a dream or that was something that really happened, but I just sort of
Right.
categorized it as a dream. So things like that when I was little. And then as I got older, I could sense ghosts. I never actually saw one, but I could sense them. I
Mm-hmm.
In my 20s, I saw what I believe to be a unidentified flying object. Doesn't necessarily mean it's alien, but it was something that I had
Okay.
never seen, and I was heavily involved in UFO research even at that age. And then, like I went to the Hotel Del Coronado when I was really young, and I
Hmm.
remember turning down a hallway that was under construction, and I felt like I was going to throw up. And then somebody said, oh, there was a murder down there, and blah, blah, blah. So
Really?
that kind of stuff. What makes
Okay.
me mad is that for an entire life spent researching and writing about this stuff pretty much, I have never had a direct in-your-face experience.
Okay.
It's
But
always been like in that shady gray zone where I'm like,
hmm.
okay, did that just happen? Or no, maybe not.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's the thing because I mean, when I was growing up, you know, I read books, and back then, really, the only one that put out ghost books was Hans Holzer. He was the one that,
Right.
the go-to guy. I mean, that was most well known. But like I tell everybody, the way they have information in multiple sources where people now can, God, you get it everywhere if you're interested in the paranormal or
Right.
whatever. Back then, and like you said, there was that show Unexplained, In Search of, I'm sorry, In Search of, those were the
Yeah,
shows
there
that
was
finally
one called
started coming out
Unexplained
with that.
too. Yeah, yeah, those great shows, before all of the Ghost Hunter and Monster Hunter and UFO Hunter type shows that are
Yes.
on now. We had those wonderful shows. So
Y-
obviously we saw it on TV, you
Right. It
know?
was like it started, I want to say that it really started taking off like in the 90s is when it started. And yeah, it wasn't, and and even I did it in my family. As a matter of fact, my family was a very no nonsense family. Like that.
Yeah.
That where you like what you were saying that you say, well, where did I get this interest from? It's not like you're surrounded by it. You see the adults around you. You just fall into it, and um, as you get older, it just doesn't go away. But
Yeah, no, I think it gets worse because you
yeah,
start to, you learn more and so I grew up with a scientist father. My father was a geophysicist and my
okay,
mom was like really creative. So I got both sides of the coin, the creative storytelling, art kind of mom. And then my dad was a scientist. But what was really interesting was when I was really little, I learned, my dad was obsessed with UFOs. Now that's
wow,
something that maybe when I was like 3 or 4 or 5 cents. But by the time I was 7 or 8, I used to sit in the kitchen when he would have some of his colleagues over,
okay,
and they would, these are scientists, these are oceanographers, astrophysicists, geophysicists, geologists,
mm-hmm.
that people that he worked with and knew, and they would all talk about UFOs. And that now that I think back on that, that was pretty mind blowing. But at the time, it was like I did not know that science and the paranormal, couldn't go hand in hand.
Right, yeah, it was like a bad word if you were a scientist if you said you were into
Yeah,
the
it
paranormal.
wasn't to them. Although my dad did later say that you didn't talk about those things,
Hmm.
in the halls of academia, but they talked about them
Oh, right, yeah,
personally.
exactly. Amongst
Yeah,
people you trusted, which were probably very few that you
yeah.
would say something like along those lines. Because otherwise you would just
What
be
it proved
shooting
to
your
me,
career in the forget
oh
it.
God, yes, yeah, yeah, because your boss might not. But what
Yeah.
it proved to me was that they, a lot of scientists really are interested in the paranormal,
Hmm.
but they kind of have to pursue that interest after they do their sciencey stuff,
Yes,
so to speak.
exactly,
And
exactly.
but I mean, think about it. If millions and millions of people over the course of history are having these experiences, why would we not think scientists would be interested in finding out what they are and where they come from, how they manifest, if we have anything to do with the manifestation of paranormal phenomena? Of course they are. Of
Of
course
course,
they're
and yeah.
interested.
Yeah, but then you get the scientist, the one if you can't quantify it, if you can't reproduce it, blah 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 blah,
That's the
then
problem.
that's it, forget
That's the
it.
problem.
And it's come on, let's
Yeah.
face it. Everything about the paranormal, whether it's UFOs, whether it's ghosts, life after death, whether it's cryptids, come on, it's like a lot of theories. Uh, but as far
And
as
it's subjective experiences that you can't duplicate, in a clinical setting. and maybe you can't apply the scientific method to, but I think it's changing. I think a lot more scientists now are saying, okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
Maybe this stuff has its own method by which we can study it and maybe someday even prove how it happened. And we might end up finding out that it's got a lot of science behind it. We just were places or whatever. But yeah, that's been the problem.
Well, I think also with a lot of the discovery of in physics that they're saying about what's really there, a lot of them are going,
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Could this apply?
Yes.
And it was funny. I had a conversation the other day with somebody about the reticular activating system, which is a little cluster of nerves at the end of the brain stem that literally works to filter out everything that your brain is that's coming at your brain, which is somewhere in like the vicinity of 40 or 400 million bits of information per minute. Okay, per minute. It's some astronomical number like that. So what the RAS does is it narrows your focus down to a minimum of, or maybe 40. And that's all that you can deal with to survive and, live your life. So can you imagine all of the other stuff that our brains are not even allowing us to perceive?
Yeah, because
our brain... Exactly, and our brain decides that's not really important to me right now. I got to raise 3 kids, and work my job and get the tires fixed on the car.
Especially now that everybody wants it to multitask. That, and believe me, I mean, my degree is I tell everybody is in human behavior, and I'm a big follower of subconscious. I'm a behaviorist. I consider subconscious behaviorist. And as you know,
that's a good one.
The more than 3/4 of our mind goes into the subconscious, which means, like you said, we're taking all this information wherever it is, sight, sound, but the most of it we shove it because, like you said, otherwise we'd be like, huh? And only 12%. Yeah, but it's in there.
Exactly.
And that's why people sometimes do things that they themselves don't understand. And I mean, we could go into people being in light hypnotic trances. We have a lot of subliminal, I don't want to say subliminal, let me take that back. But certain beats and even commercials and movies and certain music rhythms will put you into a light hypnotic trance and make you more receptive, and it goes into your subconscious mind, blah, blah. So yes, but that we're being bombarded, people don't realize it. Huh?
But that to me is the future of paranormal research.
Yes.
Because for so long, think about even maybe 5 to 10 years ago, everybody was focused on things like ghost hunting, and it was all about external, looking for, running around with your equipment, looking for external signals and data. But now we have to take into account psychology, our own human physiology, physics, and as you said, behavioral science, because, if our subconscious is programming the vast majority of what we perceive as reality, that means that we're blocking out a huge chunk of reality just because our subconscious decided, no, that's not important to you. And so all of that stuff we need to take into account. And that might explain why you could be standing next to somebody and they see a ghost and you're like, huh? What? No, I don't see nothing,
Well, this is, and a lot of it, people don't realize that behavior modification, anybody that really wants to modify your behavior is really going to go after your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind.
Exactly.
Your conscious mind is only what we need to, like what we're doing now to drive the car, make sure you don't get run over if you cross the street. Things like that. That's your conscious mind, but really who's in the driver's seat is your subconscious mind. And if anybody wants to modify their behavior or somebody's trying to modify somebody else's behavior, whether it's an individual or in group, really who they're going to talk to is the person's subconscious, because eventually that's really what, either for good or bad, whatever.
That's all the power is. That's what's driving that's like the gas that's driving your car.
Yes.
And, I think that plays into the paranormal too, because if you say, oh, I would love to see a ghost, I believe in ghosts, but subconsciously you don't, or you're terrified, you could be blocking your own ability to perceive things that are around you. So it's just so much more than just the external stuff. And I think that that's where we might get some really cool answers if people keep going in that direction.
You know what, in my experience, Marie, some of the most psychic people I know, and when I mean psychic, some of them, like you said, they have a
Mm-hmm.
handle on it, and other run away from it in the other direction. Some of them usually
Right.
have a slight problem, well, different levels of with anxiety. Okay, they're maybe a little bit
Yeah.
bordering on hypervigilance. Sometimes having to do nothing with the paranormal, but that ability, that hypervigilance, is the what part of what makes their brain sometimes pick on stuff that other people that don't.
Right. Yeah.
And
Because they're
some of
looking
them
for
really
it, right?
get
They're
that
more focused on
they
it.
wig out. They don't want to have anything to do with the paranormal. They don't even want to see people with a mask on. So
Yeah, isn't that weird? They don't seek publicity or celebrity or fame or
no,
anything like that. They're like, oh, please no. And
no.
this is just too much. It's
I
it's exhausting
Yes,
for
and it
them.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's, I mean, it's almost like the people that don't want to see him are the ones that see him the most. And it's
I
because they're,
know, and that's so frustrating. And then I'm sitting here like, oh, for God's sakes, come on, how many books do I have to write? Or
yes,
how many?
yes, yes. Or a
but
lot of people,
but then I
sometimes they
have to
have the
say
experience,
something.
and because everybody always wants, like the full Monty. Give me a full body apparition, that
I
I'll
would
be
be
like,
terrified. I would be scared. I'm being honest with you. I'm probably subconsciously blocking it because I would be terrified.
and sometimes then or people sometimes they witness things, they see things, but at the moment it doesn't it doesn't appear to be paranormal. They think it's normal, whatever it is, whether they see a person later on, it's when they realize, hey, wait a minute, or somebody tells them, no, that person that,
Yeah,
and they're like, oh my God, and
yeah,
yeah,
and then they question what they saw, which makes it
yes,
even more complicated.
yes, which I
Then you start
imagine
wondering, oh, is that what I really saw? Maybe not.
exactly, which, a
Yeah,
lot of people also, the ones that, like you said, like you were talking about that you thought in childhood when you saw what later on you realized was a gray. What's was that? What's it? Did I see that? Did I dream it? Like what was that exactly? But you did recognize it later on when you saw it, right? As far as that's what I saw when I was a kid.
I did, and it also made more sense that it would be a gray than a skeleton head if it were real. It's like, yeah, well, I would sooner believe that that was a little gray.
Mm-hmm.
Um, than a skeleton. And the thing is since childhood, I have had recurring UFO dreams, and
Okay.
they would go in cycles, and they would always be the same thing. I would be somewhere, either with family or friends, or out and about, and I would get this awful feeling of like, oh my God, of foreboding of something awful is going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd look up and I'd see something coming, light getting brighter, brighter. And in my head, in the dream, thinking, I need to get to safety because if that thing lands, they're coming for me. Now,
Okay.
I have had those
That's a very
dreams
unusual dream. Think
over
about it.
and over and over again for someone who then, and I've also had missing time. But
Oh,
here's the
really?
thing: I think I have my dad's sort of scientist skeptic mind because I
Mm-hmm.
still can't find anything definitive to say, oh, something must have happened. Maybe I only had all those dreams and things because I was fascinated with the subject. I don't
Right.
know, the chicken or the egg, which one came first,
Yes,
you know?
exactly. But
Yeah, but it is
and this is
kind
the
of
thing.
disturbing.
Contrary to what most people think, people in this field sometimes are the worst skeptics. There are a lot of
I
skeptics
know, I
because
know it.
you're
Yeah,
constantly questioning. Come on, you go through this checklist now. Could it be this is before you kind of go in the direction. Okay, this is unexplained, or could it be
right. I
paranormal?
don't know. I think that might be good, though, that we kind of keep ourselves in check. Because the people that I want to punch are the ones that everything is paranormal. Everything. It's like, no, no, no,
No,
not everything. And then you
no,
have the other extreme where nothing is paranormal. Those are both extremists
yeah.
to me. So I think it is good to kind of keep yourself in check,
You know what?
but also admit when it is something that's beyond your level of explanation.
I really think that those diehard skeptics, the ones that is like, I think those are the ones that hunger for proof more than anybody else. and
Oh,
they
I
just
bet
so
they do.
mad
I
that they're
think they
hungering
really
for
mean
it
it.
that they just go in the other direction and say, "Forget it, it doesn't exist." And they, as a matter of fact, they go out of their way to debunk, people in
Yeah,
that
I agree
field.
with you. It's a weird psychological thing. I agree with
Yeah,
you. And
I
I
mean,
think, and I think a lot of them become so attached to their skepticism that then it's hard for them to let go of it when they do experience something that doesn't match with that. It's like
yes,
people know that
yes,
I'm such a skeptic. I can't admit, that I didn't understand this. So
right,
yeah, it's weird.
exactly, exactly. And that you were talking about the UFOs, and that back in December, they kind of admitted finally that there was a program that was being funded for what's called UFOs, whether they're out of
Right.
off
Yeah.
planet or this planet origins. That was the first time that we had ever had any type of admission along those lines. And
And yeah, and to me, it's like big deal. I knew that.
I know, to me it was like, and everybody, and I've said this before in other shows. I say, everybody, like let's say the X Files, that not only does, let's say, the government knows they've got this huge, thing going on with the extraterrestrials. And I'm thinking, I think sometimes people don't realize that maybe they're holding back on telling the public at large because they're afraid to admit of how much they don't know. Because I think people would really wig
Oh,
out
I love that.
if
Absolutely, that's one of my
they
best
tell them,
theories
yeah,
on disclosure.
we yeah
Yeah,
we've got
there's
proof, but of course everybody's gonna say, who are they? What are they? Where are they from? What do they want? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. I think people would be,
yeah,
what? What
but
do you mean you don't know?
they would go nuts because that would be an admission that we know they're out here, but we don't have any control.
Yes,
Sorry,
and
people, you're on your own.
everybody's always banking on that, oh, that we've known for years, and that we've got, like, we're in
Yeah,
good, and they've given us
and they're
technology,
all
and that.
friendly.
And I'm thinking, you know
Exactly.
what? I don't care. I'd be more scared if my government, my leaders turn around and say, or admit, yes, we've been visited, and all these, maybe these sightings are, UFOs that are not man-made, as in from this planet. And then
Right.
every question that comes after that is, we don't know. Do they want to hurt us? We don't know. Are they friendly? We don't know. Do they have a
We don't
cookbook?
know.
We don't
Yeah.
know.
I
Like
mean,
the
really,
the
people would go
Twilight Zone
nuts.
show.
It is, and not to mention the fact that even if they came out and said yes, they're friendly, you still have half the population that would think the government is lying, right?
Yeah.
They're
So
lying to us. So yeah, to me, that's something that I think about all the time. It's like, how would it maybe play out? It's a no-win situation no matter how you do it. If you come on TV and say we know everything, there are enemies. Panic. If you come on TV and say we know they're there, but we don't know very much, panic. If you come on TV and say we know they're there and they seem friendly, panic. Because
right.
people are going to believe it or perceive it the way that they are, that their behavior dictates. So somebody
Exactly.
may say, that's wonderful, they're our friends. And then you'd have the guy next to them saying, it's all a conspiracy. The government isn't telling us the truth. They're really
Right.
reptilians and, they're going to kill us. So, oh my God, they can't win. They probably are like, we are never going to go on TV with full disclosure because look at what happens when a city wins a basketball playoff. People riot. Can you imagine
Yes. Or
the
some.
rioting and uprising because you'd have the religious folk wanting to know if they believe in God or Jesus or Buddha or Allah
It
or
would
what,
be.
or are they atheists? Yeah, you
People don't
have.
realize that,
Oh,
and I'm sure you remember back in 1999 when they were coming out with all these end of the world movies. It was Armageddon and what was it, Impact, Violent,
yeah, Deep
and there was,
Impact.
oh,
Yeah,
the one with the meteor. That in one of the
yeah,
scenes, Morgan
I love
Freeman
that one.
is, they don't want to disclose it because
Deep
they're afraid the
Impact.
economy is going to fall apart because people are just going to just stop
Right.
doing everything. And I
And that
think,
movie, everybody died in the end. That was creepy.
oh, I know, it was like, unless you were one of the lucky few and got to the top of the mountain, or you were
That got
special,
to,
that's it, you're
yeah,
out of luck. And I'll tell you this
exactly.
much, because of my age, I'd have been like, oh shit. I'd be like,
I know. I'd be
I'm
like,
done,
you
I'm
know what?
toast.
Forget it. I had a good run.
Right. And it's like, but the thing is that there was that one scene where the Earth is facing annihilation, but they're refusing to tell the public because they think the society will come to a grinding halt and everybody will stop. It'll be like every man for himself. It'll be everybody wild. And I
Yeah.
don't think, I mean, obviously, annihilation of the Earth is much worse, but I think that if they ever admitted of how little they know versus what they don't know, are there more
Right.
than one kind? We don't know. I think people would
Right.
just
What do they
wig
want from
out.
us? They would, yeah. I mean, I would too, even though I like to say, oh, I can't wait. I know they're there. It wouldn't be a big deal to me. Oh my God, of course it would, because then you just start asking questions of yourself. You start
Yeah.
doubting your whole life. You start doubting your whole identity. You wonder, if my kids going to be protected? What's going to happen? Can I go to the
Hmm.
grocery store, without getting zapped? Your whole life would be
Yes.
totally upended,
Yes.
even if
And
you thought you wanted to hear that.
well, I think
Yeah.
that kind of, how they say, well, we've been acclimated via Hollywood for in other words, back in the 50s and the 60s, we had all the Cold War movies, but now afterwards, when we had all these, movies that are
Hmm.
like, it's okay. I still think that we all have that fantasy that everything will be taken care of. And if that ever became reality, I see a
We'd
lot of
flip.
people would not be
We'd
able to
flip our
handle it.
lids. Yeah. Yeah, because
And
watching a movie is still that's a vicarious experience, and you're still separated from it enough to not freak out. But if it's like looking out your window and seeing it, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit
well,
different.
and Stephen Hawking, may he rest in peace. That last little snippet that he did,
Right.
like, yeah, we'd be at the short end of the stick because technologically, obviously, we're inferior, and that usually doesn't bode well for people or
Yeah,
civilizations.
really.
I'm sure everybody'd be like,
Yeah.
whoa. I mean, it's. Yeah, I think it's exciting, and I definitely think that obviously there is, extraterrestrials off planet, whether they're interdimensional from outer space. Who knows if there's more than one? What was it? The other day I was listening to a theory that they believe that there's even more than one, and that they have basically they're warring against each other, and we're caught in the middle. And I mean, I know there's a lot of theories going out there, but
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the
Hey, and
day,
any of those, yeah, any of those and all of those could be true. That's what's
yeah,
so scary,
yes, yes,
is that they could all be true.
yeah. And
So,
Marie, well, and I see, I mean, obviously, besides the UFOs, I see that you wrote a book about demons and fallen angels.
oh, yeah. And I got to tell you, that was actually one of the most enlightening experiences.
Really?
I had the publisher asked me to write about the subject, and I thought, with Larry Flaxman, who I've written a number of books with, and I wasn't real keen on doing it just because, it's kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, all right, I'll take it on. I like a good challenge. And we did a lot of research, and it ended up being a really fascinating learning experience, because when you look at the history of these the concept of evil, of devils and demons, angels, and, good versus bad and duality and all of that, and you look at the origins of all of it, you get a much different appreciation and understanding than just by looking at demons today, like in the movies, or
Right.
with the church and exorcism. It's such a limited viewpoint. And it took away a lot of the fear, if not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. It's funny because the book is so full of information that we found, but people are reluctant to buy it and read it because of that sort of stigma. Oh, I don't want demons to visit me if I start reading it. Well, trust
Right.
me,
Like
they
I'm.
didn't do anything when I was writing it. Yeah. And also, oh, I know they're bad. Well, no, not necessarily. Learn about what the Catholic Church had to do with how we perceive these ideas, how they
Mm-hmm.
created a lot of the evil connotations to, like, witches and, shamans and all that, and how everything was demonic to people that didn't understand that nature could kill you with a volcano or an earthquake. and it wasn't a demon. It was just so all of this stuff. It's a fantastic book that totally changed my perception and perspective and opened my eyes to where the whole good versus evil, where it started, and how it just got so evolved into what we have today, the more religious connotations.
Well, and people, I know, like I'm going to blame Hollywood again. That's why a lot of times we get like a certain idea of when you use that fallen angel or the demon, those words, But,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of references to whether you want to call them demons, for lack of a better words, Judeo-Christian, civilizations or writings. I mean, most ancient civilizations had reference to it, whether, like you said, it was tied into something inexplicable as far as nature, or truthfully, something that was malevolent. Oh,
Right. Well,
whether it was
anything
human or
bad, even a bad
non-human.
person. Yeah. Yeah. If, and it's just bizarre that where this began is when primitive humans categorized everything that happened to them as either being beneficial to their survival or detrimental to their survival. And then over time, that evolved into good versus bad or good versus evil. And that became God versus devil, because
Exactly.
they needed a sort of symbolic representation of that concept. And it just really evolved from there. And it's really fascinating because this is our history as human beings. It's not just, do you believe in demons or not? I mean, this goes way beyond that. It's really, really cool to look at the history of humanity and how these ideas all came about. And a lot of it started in really simple ways with, this is good, that's bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's
know?
cause and effect. Cause and
Right.
effect. The other day I was looking at these specials that they were doing about the Mayans and the Aztecs. They had some, a lot of human sacrifice, some more than others. I know the Mayans
Yeah.
they were killing
They were,
everybody,
yeah.
and others would only do it when they had stuff like drought, famine,
Yeah, it was, yeah. It
pestilence.
was like a special occasion.
Right, like exactly, like, okay, we need to appease the gods because something's going on. Or in some
Right.
cases, ritual, killings of enemies, have prisoners, in other words. And then others,
Yeah, yeah.
they would do it as part of their religious based. Even the ones that did it a lot, it was always to appease the gods,
The
or to
gods.
keep,
Yeah.
having bountiful harvest. I mean, I wouldn't have
Right.
wanted to be around at that time, but it all depends on your perspective on, or the understanding of that civilization as to what's good, what's
Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
and
Well, because if you think about it, the Mayans they didn't think that they were being evil when they
no,
sacrificed somebody into a volcano or what have you. They thought they were doing something good. We perceive it as evil because somebody died because you didn't understand the science behind the natural world. That volcano was not attacking your tribe. That volcano was doing, so they don't understand how the earth worked, or they didn't until,
right,
more scientific understanding came along.
right,
But so to them, it was like, no, 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 we're trying to save the tribe. We're trying to save everybody. And
right,
yeah, you could see
exactly,
that.
exactly. And when they did it, even when things weren't bad, they were doing it to ensure that things stayed good.
Stayed
Uh,
good, yeah.
like, hey, we're going to have enough rain and we're going to be able to grow our crops and everything will be good, or things of, and it wasn't, yeah, it was, like I said, it depends on your understanding of, I mean, I could, up to a certain point, you understand, let's say when they kill prisoners, that's war, they had these wars, but as far as, the ritualistic sacrifice, no, well, I want to say all the time, it was tied in somehow to either fertility rites or trying to keep the gods happy. They thought of blood as being very special. But of course, we look at
Yeah,
it with our present day moderns, and we're like, huh?
right, right.
I'd have
Or
been like,
did they really do that? Well, that was their level of their knowledge at the time. They
exactly.
honestly thought, we better make the god of that volcano happy so he doesn't blow us up again. I mean,
Right.
and like you said, you have to look at it from their viewpoint, not ours today in modern society.
Well, and this is the thing that, and you mentioned it earlier as far as like, like in the Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams when it comes, let's say, to the paranormal and science. For all that they had, they were great astronomers, they were great builders. As far as the science, I mean, they didn't have all the modern machinery, let's say, that we have nowadays, and they built like a lot of these ancient civilizations. They built huge buildings, and then of course from that we can go into, did they have help from
And the aliens,
extraterrestrials?
yeah, because isn't that weird how they could be so advanced on this, but so behind on this, you know? So that is kind of, does kind of make you think, well, did they have help with the real high tech stuff? Because if we look at the fact that they're still sacrificing people, that means that they're not as advanced a civilization as we thought they were. But yeah, that's definitely true.
Right, that they, as a matter of fact, not too long ago, they discovered other drawings in Nazca in Peru. They had those, they found some smaller ones that now, of course, with this wonderful Google satellite, that they
Oh,
could
I know,
see.
right?
It's like, yeah, well, they found some that they hadn't been able to before because of the way, and they were a little bit smaller, and of course, because of how much time. So they kind of saw it from the satellite, and then they sent out teams, and they kind of found that they have a bunch of other drawings out there in Nazca. And again, you ask yourself,
Yeah.
what is a civilization doing these drawings from something obviously you can only see from space or from
Right.
very elevated altitude? It's like,
Yeah, what's the point of that? And how would you even know that you got the drawing right? How
right.
do you know it looks like something unless you could see? And I remember reading, they had these outcroppings that they could stand on that were like a million miles away, and they still weren't high enough. It's like, I don't know. That might be reaching. And again, even if they had some big outcropping that they could see,
Hmm.
why were they doing it? Just so they could
Yes.
go up on their outcropping and look at the pretty picture they made? I'm pretty sure they had more important things to worry about than just
Yes.
drawing pretty meaningless pictures, like surviving. So
Surviving,
that,
survival,
and
yes.
yeah, and that's the thing. For a civilization at that time to put in that time and effort, that
Yes.
has to be important to them enough to do it.
Right. The
Because
manpower
they
that
didn't
you would
have,
have to
yeah,
divert, whether
right,
from hunting or agriculture or war, for a long time,
yeah,
because
yeah. Oh, let's go draw some pictures.
right, like it's all, we have
Sure.
nothing better to do. Let's go out Sunday and or the next
Yeah,
holiday, and
let's go
let's
draw
just,
some lines.
no, it's
Let's
like
draw some lines so someday people will look at them and
we'll look
think,
at them.
the aliens did.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's pretty
I
funny.
mean, we could go into
Oh,
that. Also the fact that, and I'm sure you've seen, a lot of people will say, well, all these different civilizations that did a version of the pyramid building, whether it was, of course,
right.
Egypt or the Mayans or Angkor Wat, they all have that same idea. And even I think it was, I want to say it was the Incas where they found those even when they did sacrifices, they would put them up at the
Right.
very highest point of the mountain. It's almost like
Yeah.
this is as close as we can get to the heavens
To God. Right.
as
Dear God,
with an
take this
offering. Yeah.
body. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yep.
yeah, they're the pyramids. They have them in the Koreas, North and
Hmm.
South Korea. They found them in Cambodia, in Bolivia. They're all over the world.
Yes.
So that must mean something.
Of course.
And again, that they took the time out of their survival skills to build those things. It couldn't have been easy. Either somebody
No.
built them for them or they really thought this is important. We have to build these.
I'm th- I, they a lot of them, most engineers will nowadays, they really haven't really given a good explanation as to how they did it, considering these different civilizations at different times Whether some of them didn't
Right.
even have, like, for example, like over there in Mesoamerica, they didn't have pack animals. They didn't
Yeah.
have.
I,
So it's like, same thing.
yeah, just kind of pulley system. I mean, I like how they are trying, but they will really reach, with their possible explanations. Like, well, it took, you could do it with 200,000 people. It's like, really? Really, you think that's how it was done? And it would take 20 years.
Right.
Why? Again, ask yourself why. First of all, if that was how
Yes.
it was built, it must have been awfully dang important to somebody to build that thing.
Yes.
It must have had an incredible meaning or purpose. And
Yes.
pretty much, I think you would find proof of 20 years of time passage in the dirt, the sediment, the rock, whatever, that would lead to that theory. So, yeah, it's really funny because, I mean, there are people that will say, oh, they know the pyramids were built by humans. Well, how do you know that? Well, there was some TV show that said it was. Oh, okay, good. I'm
Right.
glad that's how you're defining reality by,
No.
I saw it on the TV show.
Because you know what? I mean, don't get me wrong, but back then, if you manpower was important as far as, for civilization, they needed their populace
Yeah,
to be
and
doing
defense.
something.
Right.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
it's not like
You don't
here
send your people
nowadays.
out to die, out making you a pyramid when you might be going to
Yes.
war with another nation or tribe soon. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And a lot of people, and if we go down that rabbit hole, and then you think about, and it makes you wonder if, let's say we're thinking, okay, where was their interpretation of God's, where was it visitations from aliens? Again, fallen
Right.
angels or demonic beings? Were they also aliens, but the ones that maybe were not so friendly? We could look at it
Yeah.
also
They,
that
yeah.
way. Um,
Were they mistaken aliens for angels because they came from the sky?
yes,
Or were they
exactly.
mistaking, cryptozoological creatures for
Hmm.
demons because they, had red glowing eyes and were not really friendly? So yeah, we have to
Exactly.
ask ourselves that too.
Right. Whether it's, are we talking a rip between dimensions, parallel worlds? I mean, that right there, because I tell everybody, everybody of course looks to the heavens as far as extraterrestrial or life from another universe, but what if really the way they get from point A to point B is via dimensional, some obviously something we don't know how to do or understand.
Well, yeah, I mean that's pure physics, and it makes a hell of a lot more sense than them coming from another planet, out there
Yes.
in the because in a lot of the UFO sightings, in fact, probably I don't know if I would say a majority of them, but a good chunk of UFO sightings don't sound like a physical object that came flying across the sky and then flew off.
Hmm.
People will say it just appeared in the sky and then it vanished, as if it were coming from another dimension, a parallel universe, another timeline or reality where just for a few seconds we got a glimpse of it before it. And sometimes people will say things like, there was my husband and I were walking our dog and we smelled sulfur and there was like an electric sort of static and our hair on our arms was standing on end and it just everything felt a little disoriented. Then the whatever appeared and it kind of flickered in and out of vision like it was being projected from like a movie projector
Hmm.
and then it vanished. So that's not like a solid Bigfoot creature who runs out of the forest. Hi, here I am, and then runs back in.
Right.
There's some other stuff going on there.
Right.
So yeah, it could be anything.
I
And I think
think,
that applies to some different types of ghost sightings too.
right.
Some people say, oh, the ghost appeared almost solid and it interacted with me. And then sometimes it just sort of floats on by and it doesn't even notice that you're looking at it.
Exactly. Or you hear, or you have like the smells or things of something that was being done, and it's almost like you're witnessing it. Whatever daily life maybe was very repetitive. It's almost
Yeah,
like it's happening at the same time in
exactly.
your same timeline, and they kind of cross.
Yeah, it's like deja vu. That's what I think deja vu is.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
experiencing yourself in another timeline or reality or universe that is just a little tiny bit off sync from this one, and it's just for a few seconds.
Right, and I know that there's theories out there that people say, well, when there's a spike sometimes in UFO sightings, there's a spike in sightings of either Bigfoot or other cryptids, and they try to link them up.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe what, this is Marlene's theory going out there, but here we go. Maybe when these extraterrestrials do maybe a rip or a tear or a slide or whatever it is that they do from one dimension, other things pop in and out, take the opportunity
yeah.
to come
Doesn't that
through.
make sense? We're,
you
we're
know,
gonna we're gonna open a wormhole. Whoever wants to come visit Earth,
right?
will only be open for 3 days. And as silly as that sounds, it makes a whole lot of sense. Like you
Yeah,
open that doorway, and they're not going to be the only things coming through, and
right.
possibly, things are going out. Like you always wonder with all these missing persons and people that disappear in the woods or whatever, and never ever locate any remains or anything. Missing animals, people that have time slips. Are they going in and out of that same doorway? Some of them come back, some don't, like the Bermuda Triangle. So, yeah, I think your theory is a good one because I would think the same thing. It's like the timing is right. We're opening the door. It's like when you, on Black Friday, when you go shopping, and they open the door and everybody floods in.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Hey,
then
well,
they close
maybe
the
on the
door
other
and
side of
don't.
whatever it is, after a while, they learned, hey, whenever one of those things with the lights come through,
Yeah, let's
it's like
go.
jump through. Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't that make sense to
yes,
explain? I
yes,
think even ghost
exactly.
sightings go up.
It's
Yeah, it definitely. It's like if the opportunity is there physically for that stuff to come through, then it would be
yes,
more than just one type of phenomenon.
right,
So
or
I think that's cool.
right, or you've heard of all these, the many years ago or hundreds of years ago, where a certain town or part will say they kind of seen some cryptid and they'll see it for 5, 6, 7 months and then all of a sudden the sightings stop.
Yeah, like
And
Mothman. Yeah,
right, Mothman, other weird stuff, and it just as suddenly as it comes and it stops. And you have a bunch of people that are saying, we saw it, we saw this, we saw this.
yeah,
And why not? Why couldn't it be something along that just came over this side and um, for all we know, even the extraterrestrials might be saying, "Get that thing back in here," because
yeah.
it shouldn't have got over there.
It's like when you open up a corral and all the horses
Yeah, it's
get
like,
out. It's like,
oh
no,
my
no, no, I
God,
only wanted those two.
wait, the humans aren't ready for this. Go get it quick, bring it back.
Exactly.
I
And
mean,
yeah, we can't control those crazy black-eyed kids. Get them back in here. But I really think that if we haven't been able to explain it in light of just being physical objects that exist on our planet, there's a whole universe out there. We're told there's parallel universes. We're told there's other dimensions, possibly other alternate timelines. Why could a lot of this stuff, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it come from those places? And that's why it's not consistent. It's like, well, I see a ghost every day, and he lives next door. But it's not consistent like that. It doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen at the same time, unless it's a weird imprint type of ghost. It's so erratic and inconsistent that you have to look beyond something that, it lives out in the woods, and you got a million people chasing after it, and they still can't find the dang thing. Well, maybe it runs in the woods, and then it goes up its little vortex into the reality that it's from. I mean, we assume Bigfoot is physical. We really don't know that.
well, the only thing I can say as far as all of this is concerned is that you have to have an open mind about the possibility. Uh,
Yes, yes, yes.
I know that a lot of it sounds like, but anything is possible because we don't have proof. We don't have proof for it, but we don't have proof contrary.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
and you can't, and no longer can we just say ghosts are the essence of a dead person because
right.
we don't know now. There are so many different types of ghost sightings then
Yes.
there might be 8 or 9 different explanations.
Sure. Yeah, we really don't know. Do we just exist because now we don't have a human body, but we're self-aware and our consciousness exists on another level where you don't need a human body to exist anymore, but you're
Right.
still self-aware. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and unless you're on the other side, you won't ever know.
I
But
know.
it's one of
That's
those
so.
things like I
Now,
guess I'll find out when I get there. I mean, even though I'm not in a hurry to
I
get there.
hope so. Wouldn't it be funny? Yeah, you die, and then there's like a whole nother set of questions that, like, okay, now we got to figure out what this is about.
Exactly, exactly. Like everybody said, like who said that? You were like, what's that rest in peace part about? I don't.
I know. Now I got a whole new set of paranormal phenomena to deal with.
And Maria, I'm going to ask you. I see you wrote a book called Super Volcano, and that when I looked at that, I was just thinking about what's going on in Hawaii, that they've got those
Yeah.
eruptions,
Oh, yeah.
and I was watching a clip of these lava things shooting up in the air right next to somebody's yard, and I'd be like, who's living there? Hello.
I know. Can you believe it? And those people are like, yeah, it happens all the time. And they
I
always go back. And the lava is like creeping up on their house, and they only have maybe a couple of hours to evacuate. I would seriously not live there, but I guess Hawaii is so beautiful.
yeah.
People just, I think they put up with it. Like I live in San Diego, we put up with earthquakes and wildfires, and people that live in the Midwest put up with tornadoes and, hurricanes, blizzards, whatnot. So, but it is, and yeah, and that's a very small volcano compared to a super volcano.
Well, they
So,
were
but even that, you could see the damage.
yeah, but they were saying also that they have to worry about these basically poison gases that come
Oh,
out.
the sulfuric gases. Yeah, exactly. And people don't realize that. You have a bunch of tourists that, oh, let's go see the lava. Let's go. Let's see how close we can get. And they have no idea they're exposing themselves to toxic gases.
Let me ask you, is
It's
there
like tornado chasers.
I mean, everybody tells me hurricanes. I say, you know what? At the very least, in a hurricane, they give you fair warning, and you can either
Yeah.
get your stuff and leave, and go to state and just come back and deal with whatever is here,
Right.
or
The flooding, debris. Yeah.
yeah, or you stay here. I mean, I was born and raised in Miami, so I've been through a bunch of hurricanes, some worse than others. But at the very least, it's something that you can have choices about. But
Right.
and the
It's
volcanoes,
coming.
I take it the
Yeah.
same thing. If there's enough heads up that you get. But I was looking at
Oh,
those clips.
absolutely.
Do you
Yeah.
and
You get.
is there any truth that they were saying that at some point that California is going to have another big earthquake like they had? I know
Oh,
they had.
absolutely. Yeah, that was my dad. My dad was a geophysicist, and
Okay.
his background was seismology, earthquakes, volcanoes. Absolutely, we're sitting on one of the biggest faults in the country that has been ready to break in various parts for a long, long time. Nobody can quite say. That's the bad thing about earthquakes is any lead time you get is going to be just a matter of seconds.
Yes, God.
Um, but so it's something that we live with every day. And
Right.
yeah, it's either going to happen down here where I'm like at the southern part of Southern California or a
Hmm.
little bit closer to Central California. Now, here's the problem with the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is tectonically linked
Hmm.
to the Long Valley caldera, which is a supervolcano. And it is a supervolcano that has the capacity of being almost as big as Yellowstone if Yellowstone were to completely super erupt. But the thing about Yellowstone is it's not tectonically linked to a massive fault line. So if we had an 8.0 earthquake
Right.
on the southern San Andreas Fault, it could, and my dad and I wrote about this in Supervolcano, it could trigger a super eruption at Long Valley. Could. Not
Right.
not positive, but that possibility exists. There's some research that shows that it possibly could do that. That's really scary. But you know
Wow.
what? An asteroid could enter the atmosphere very quickly and hit us, and it's just like you got to just live your life, be
Oh,
prepared.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what?
I'm more afraid of tornadoes. Those things
Oh
scare the
yeah,
crap out of
no.
me because
One time, as a matter
they're
of
they're
fact,
just wicked.
one time this was back in the 80s. Me and my husband, we took a trip, cross country in our little Chevy van up to Yellowstone. And we were heading east and we went to the Dakotas, and this kid, he wasn't watching what I was doing. He bumped us in the back and we got off and we're like, and he's like looking at us like all wigged out. He's like, don't you hear that? We're like, hear what? We realize he's sorry. He goes, there's a tornado coming. And we're like, huh? And he goes,
Oh my
just go to
God,
that
no
store.
way.
Don't worry. And we see people running into like stores and things. And me and him are like, what? And we followed
Uh,
over there. We got in there. It was like a little 7-Eleven kind of store.
yeah.
And that was a big deal. And we were like the two dumbasses. Like,
That's
stop! You
scary.
just hit
I
our
wonder why,
car.
because I mean, you think about a tornado and you can kind of see where it's coming, where it's going. But like a hurricane or an earthquake
Yeah.
or a super volcanic eruption, they're more widespread. But tornadoes scare me because if you can't get away and they change direction, I don't know. There's just something really terrifying to me about a tornado. I think just the way it looks. That idea that if you can't get out of the way or it changes direction, you're going to get sucked up into this vortex and thrown 20 miles away. They're just so intimidating to me. People that live in Tornado Alley and deal with them all the time,
Let
I
me
don't know
tell
how they
you,
do it.
I
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think that that and the fear that you would, let's say, like you said, you're living your life and somebody's at work and your kids are at school and something happens and you have no idea if
Yeah.
they're okay. I don't know if I could deal with that because that right there of like,
Yeah, that's the hard part. People need to know what to do and
well,
how to prepare and how to communicate if cell phone towers go down and all that stuff.
no, let me tell you something. I've
Nature is so
realized that
scary.
people don't realize that when something like that happens, your cell is basically useless 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
everybody thinks that it doesn't work either because there's too many people calling or everything is down and it just doesn't work.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's trying to call somebody and say, "Are you okay?" or "I'm okay."
Yeah,
Don't worry about me.
yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's like and that was another thing that I was like I read a short little blurb that like you were talking about how sometimes when they had that what's going on and I have no idea if it's connected, with what's going on in Hawaii, but then they had a real short little tremor close to New Orleans, like a really rare, and I was like, New
Right.
Orleans? What? You
Yeah.
know?
A lot of that is from fracking too. I mean, it's definitely related to fracking and Oklahoma. There's a huge fault line nearby, but it's not active. But they're
Right.
having a lot of smaller. You know what? No matter where you are,
Yeah, there's
there's
always something
something that you
going
got to
on.
deal with and worry about. People say, "Oh, I'll move to Florida." Hello, hurricanes.
Yeah, and let me tell you
Oh,
something,
I'll
and a
move to
lot of people don't
Montana. Hello,
realize,
blizzards. Yeah.
like a lot of people,
Yep.
unless you live all the way up in northern Florida, since we're a peninsula, if you decide you're going to leave, guess what? Those highways become jammed really quick, and it's a long state to get out
Yeah.
of. So unless you're
It
really close to
is.
the
Yeah.
Georgia state line, you're going to be sitting in traffic on the way out of here if
Can
you
you
get out.
imagine? That's probably, yeah, I mean, that's scary 'cause that means that's going to be where most of the bad stuff is going to happen. Will be while
Uh,
you're sitting trying to get out.
it's,
That's
I mean, I've
scary.
been through some really bad hurricanes, and like you said, after a while, it's like nobody likes to think about it because that's how us humans, we function, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. And you made good reference to it. Even nowadays, can you imagine when we're talking ancient civilizations when they were faced with these catastrophes that they didn't have the benefit of science to explain, hey,
Right. They didn't know. Yeah. There must be a God and he's angry at us because look
yeah,
at all
what did
that
you
red
do?
hot lava coming out.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Quick, sacrifice some virgins. Yes, they gotta be
Yeah.
virgins.
If you can find some.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. Just like because yeah, it's like yeah, that's the
Oh,
yeah. It was like yeah, you better lose your virginity quick.
yeah,
but
really. I know. Oh,
but yeah,
brother.
the people don't realize that um, I think personally, and I tell everybody personally, I think the paranormal. Everybody sometimes thinks paranormal is just ghosts. To me, paranormal is ghost or the existence or what happens to us after death. It encompasses
Yeah, I mean, it's anything that's not
UFOs,
normal, right?
cryptids, everything that's out there. And, some people will say, well, we become more technologically advanced, uh, and that's another thing. Now we got the specter sometimes that we have of AI, as in the Terminator Skynet thing going on. It's like we love to make up things that are going to, basically do away with
Yeah, isn't
us.
that weird? We like to think about that stuff,
Yeah,
as
but
depressing as it is.
yeah, that they say, as our technology advances, we still want mystery or the unexplained and things like that. And I mean, we could go on and on. Like, okay, well, does AI, when does it become sentient? Will it become sentient? And then
Yeah,
again,
then we got to worry about that, right? That's like, oh God, then we got to worry about robots and stuff taking over.
yeah, it's like, yeah, let's like, all right, we're having, yeah, we've got good imaginations. And I tell everybody, you know what? I understand. Hey, I wouldn't mind if robots did all the drudge work that humans have to do, that mind-numbing stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'd be like, you know, wow, what if, let's face it, what if I'm on let's say on the short end of the stick or something like that? I mean, it's like there's always a downside to too much automation, I guess. I guess I can't deny I was born in the 20th century. And then,
Yeah, it's a different mindset than these young people today.
well, yeah, it's like, let's face it, we've seen a lot of, God, I tell everybody, God, once upon a time, I had a daytimer, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I ran
And
my
a
life out of a
pager.
daytimer, and then I got a beeper. So it was this thing of this
Isn't that
phone thing that
something?
now people can't live without their phones. That was, hey, I didn't have to worry about those
We did
things.
just fine. We did just fine without
Yeah.
these phones. And now we're glued to them too. So we can't. I guess we can't complain too much.
I have I have my own theories that we because we have to be instantly available, whether it's emails or phones. I think that's up to stress level, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
better just nobody.
absolutely.
People who were patient, they called you, nobody was home, they'd call later, or they sent you something in the mail.
Yeah, or leave them out, and then we have the ability to leave a message, and now it's
Yes,
just like, and now
exactly.
it's like the second I turn my phone on, people start messaging me because I guess
Yes.
on Facebook or something they can see that I'm on
Mm-hmm.
my phone. It's like, are you serious? Can I have my
Exactly.
coffee first?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, and even the ones I get it from, my kids are adults, but they don't live with me, but I'm still supposed to be like the 24/7 like, Mom, why didn't you pick up the phone? I was taking a
Yeah,
shower. I do take
exactly.
a shower every day and I don't take the phone in there
Yeah,
with me. They're
I know. That's eventually their phones are just, I think, going to be built in as a chip in the brain,
yeah,
so
I
you don't
mean,
have to, worry about not having it in the shower.
I know. God forbid. Don't even say that. Don't even say that
I
because pretty
know it.
soon,
I know.
But anyway, Marie, I would like to thank you so much for spending this time. It has been great to speak to you because
It has
you
been a blast,
you've delved into
absolutely.
all those areas which delight the paranormal enthusiasts, all those wonderful, like, oh, they're not dark corners anymore. They're not that dark. But
We
like I
shine some
said,
light. Woohoo!
you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of mysteries yet that we have to experience because, like everything else, once you make a discovery, then there's something else out there that you realize or as humans, we don't know about or we don't understand. So, God, yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive, regardless of
It is. I
how many
agree.
unknown
Yeah.
things are out there. So again, thank you so much for spending this time. You have been wonderful, and I will. Let me ask you: do you have any books right now? Any projects that you're working on?
I do. You're going to laugh, but in September, I have a disaster survival guide coming out from Visible Ink Press
Oh, you're
because
kidding!
I'm actually trained through Red Cross and FEMA and CERT programs in all of that stuff. And then I'm working on for early next year a book called Celebrity Ghosts and Notorious Hauntings, which is
Really?
really, really fun.
Oh
Famous
my
ghosts,
God.
famous locations, notorious, axe murder homes, and anything that has a reputation for being really well known. And it's just
Uh-huh.
going to be a really fun
Oh,
guidebook. So
yes.
those are the two things. Yeah, that'll be
Wow.
out next year, I think next spring.
So you've got
So,
a lot of things. Oh, and by the way, now that you said that thing about preparations for disasters, down here, this
uh-huh.
last disaster that that we had a shortage of Red Cross volunteers. They didn't show up, that they show up like when they open up the shelters and stuff.
The shelters,
They
yeah.
didn't have any Red Cross volunteers didn't show up.
Oh, they're probably all like spread out. Maybe they
Well,
went to Hawaii.
that's what
But
people
you know
don't
what? I mean,
understand. That when it was like
people
something
need to
like,
get
guess what?
trained.
Those volunteers, if they live in that area, they've got their own things to think about.
Their families, yeah.
See, that's when
And
a robot
oftentimes,
would
if
come in
there's a
handy.
bigger emergency,
Yeah.
yeah, because if there's a bigger emergency, they'll get asked to go to that. And people don't understand, something really bad happens and you're not trained yourself. Don't be depending on anybody else to save you because they may be dead or
No.
they may be taking care of their own families or they just can't get to you through the rubble or
No.
fire or whatever.
And let
So,
me tell you something.
yeah, I'm all
This
for
is
training.
people don't realize, because what happened in Florida during the fall was right after Harvey in Texas, and a lot of the resources of the country, as far as FEMA and all that stuff, went out there because it was
They were
catastrophic.
already tapped out. Yeah,
And people don't
absolutely.
realize that here, even here, normally, like I said, I've lived here, so I've been through a lot of experiences. Normally, you would have, I mean, you would have had gasoline trucks coming into. We didn't have gasoline, and I know that was because most of them were still working on the aftermath of Harvey. And
Yeah.
people don't realize exactly like what you said that we are so used to having things taken. Somebody's going to help up. The cavalry's going to show up. That if
Yeah.
you have a couple of
Yeah.
things
Call
back to back,
911. They'll come and help you. Yeah, exactly. There is not going to be 911. The phones won't work.
no,
Unless you have a
no.
ham radio or whatever. Yeah, I agree. People just have gotten lazy and
Yes, it was like a
dependent
it
on
was like a
others.
real eye opener. People don't realize that if we, God forbid, and I wouldn't ever want that, but if we have like back to back catastrophes or emergencies, national emergencies, whoever comes in
We're in
second,
trouble.
we're in trouble.
Yeah,
It's like, hey, you
exactly.
better. Let me tell you something. What saved the day in our household was our gas barbecue.
Yeah, I
Okay,
agree
it
with
was like
you.
that's what kept
Really? Yeah.
that. So, but yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see that. But again, thank you, and I look forward to seeing what's coming up. Is also with that paranormal show because I'm always an enthusiast and I'm
Oh,
always
well,
looking
thank
for,
you.
like I tell them, I've seen with paranormal shows the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm always looking for the good. Always looking for the good.
Well, that sounds good. I'll have to come back on when the Celebrity Ghost book comes
Absolutely.
out. That'll be
Yes,
a blast
yes,
to
yes.
talk
I would
about.
love to see that.
That'll be fun.
Okay, Marie, thank you so much, darling. You've been wonderful.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Likewise. Bye bye. Oh, guys, isn't she wonderful? Wow, she, oh, I don't know. She's going to be doing that project. Is it coincidence or what? About, preparedness for emergencies. And I'm going to tell you something. I know everybody here is into paranormal and the weird stuff, cryptids, whatever. But let me tell you, if you really, really want to get into really scary stuff, this is an area that you could that fits the bill. And whether you're a fan or not, I'm sure some of you have seen like The Walking Dead, and basically take the zombies out of the equation. It's like what happens when all the things and all the structures that we have in society, the grease that keeps the wheels of our society moving along so everybody behaves and whatever, all of a sudden that basically disappears from one day to the next. And like I was here in '92 when Andrew, like basically, I lived down here. My house was half my belongings were swept, God knows where, to the Everglades, and the rest down the street. And I stayed in my house so my few belongings wouldn't be taken out. And it was a surreal moment when I saw military trucks and the National Guard soldiers patrolling the streets, and I had helicopters. It was like, besides the fact of the actual experience of the hurricane, and that was of when I say contained, contained as in immediately the rest of the United States, as far as not only the government, but I mean, bunch, charities, churches opened up, and people were sending clothing and household items, and a lot of the churches in the area that hadn't been impacted would serve food out in their parking lots. And of course, because let's say I'm using Andrew as an example, that happened like in South Florida, what they call the Homestead area. So, and even then, but what I'm saying is that it was a contained disaster. The bulk of the country was unaffected and could come in and help. But I'll tell you what, this last time when we had Irma, that was the one that left me without electricity, and then Maria and everything. And right before that, we had Harvey in Texas and the flooding and everything. I'm telling you, there was a delay in getting here, not only emergency services, but gasoline trucks. Because, and I'm going to give you, for instance, there was a bunch of people that had left Florida that were coming back. The highways, okay, were packed. So all these truckers that were coming in, whether it was with gasoline, with food, with all the things that they supply with, they were having to contend with all these bunch of other people that normally would not be in the highway because they were trying to get back in here. And especially like the further south you live in Florida, you're way at the end like me. The point I'm trying to make is, without knowing the exact contents of what her book is going to be about, I've thought about it because I've lived it all my life, but I think that a lot of people always think that if something catastrophic happens, that emergency, whether it's local emergency services or FEMA or government, is going to step in. But I'm telling you, if we get more than a couple of things happening, yeah, there's a lot of manpower, but I guarantee you're going to be spending days, maybe a week or more, depending, okay, on having to live, okay, to live without electricity, to live maybe without running water, depending on where you're at or how you get your supply. When I was here in '92 with Andrew, they had people that were going into houses to loot them. And there was a lot of people that stayed behind with their firearms to defend their belongings. And I remember going out and all you could hear was just the hum of generators. It was very dark because all the lights were non-existent. And as a matter of fact, they would even have certain blocks in neighborhoods where people agreed to patrol just to keep the looters out. And that was a small microcosm, like along the lines, that's how easily sometimes civility and lawfulness can go by the wayside. That to me is very scary and very possible because I've witnessed it. So I'm very interested to see what she has to say. I think that, we ignore those possibilities at our peril, depending on where you live in the country. Sometimes, or even if you say, and believe me, I wouldn't wish this for us, but even if you live in a part of the country that normally doesn't suffer from any type of natural disaster, whether it's a hurricane or tornadoes or earthquakes or a volcano, have you ever thought it's any type of pandemic? Like what we had at the beginning of the 20th century with the Spanish flu here, where, it wiped out, which was a worldwide scourge, but basically, from what I understand, came over to the United States with the the American soldiers returning from World War I. That decimated, and that went primarily after young adults, not what normally would die when you had diseases which were children, the aged, and the infirm. It was usually the young adults who died very quickly. What would happen then? It's like, And I'm not a survivalist, by the way. I should be, but I'm not. I'm not saying I'm one of these like. But it it gives you food for that. So definitely, I got to follow up and see what happens with Marie, with that, and and that thing that she's talking about, the celebrity. And like I said, I'm ready. I'm ready. Because when you're in the paranormal, you watch all the shows, the good ones and the hokey ones. And I do. I admit I do. Like I said, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And even the reruns of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm always ready for good stuff. Good stuff, entertaining stuff, factual stuff. Even sometimes if it's places that all the paranormal groups have gone through, I'm always hoping that if they go there, they're going to give it a fresh angle or more accurate angle. In other words, because some of them just kind of rehash the same story, the information about the site. And like I said, I'm a big researcher. And then when you find out, it's like, that's not really what happened there. That's not accurate. There's a lot of accurate stuff that's just as scary, but they just pick up and they just, I guess whoever produces the show or writes the show, or I don't know, they just say, oh yeah, that other show they said that the guy was hung from that tree. No, nobody was ever hung. And it's like, yeah, but something else did happen. But whatever. That's let me get off my soapbox on that one. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming and sharing this time with me. You guys are wonderful. Please do not forget, my true believers, submit your stories at miamighostchronicles.com. Catch me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, if you catch me on YouTube, I usually stagger these shows just because I've got so many wonderful guests, which I do, but I usually release the podcast version of the show earlier. And you can either find us at miamighostchronicles.com or the different podcast platforms like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes. You can get a podcast version so you could listen to it at your leisure. And guys, if you have any ideas, any suggestions, any requests for certain people or certain types of shows, I would love to hear about it. Write to me at marlene@miamighostchronicles.com. I mentioned before I'm considering getting a phone line to just take in calls from people calling in. I'm working on that. Obviously, I would love to take calls without screeners, because the truth is, it's like, that's the fun thing. I would just like to hear people talk about their experiences or what they got to say. But, there's always going to be, every party has a pooper. Well, that's what I'm afraid of. The poopers, or they make that plural that want to spoil the fun. So that's on the back burner. I'm thinking about it. So that's something where we'll go live and I will have you guys call in and talk about what's the subject. Oh, anything paranormal. Who am I fooling? It doesn't have to be what that show's about. It could be about anything paranormal, guys. So anyway, take care. What is today? I've lost track. Today is Thursday, guys. Weekend starts tomorrow, kind of. Prep day for the weekends tomorrow. So have a great weekend. Take care.